first Blanton's. Wow. That's different. I really like that. Peychauds or Peychauds or Peychaud.
Yeah, now I'm gorgeous. Although probably fuzzier was better.
Okay. So this is not what I expected. Hey, it's Thursday. It's time to do this. What do you think? Right? August 4th? What a day. What a day. Had a great day so far today. Of course, it rained this morning, and we spent some time watching some cooking shows. I did a little work. It was fun. But mostly what I did today is I researched this bottle of George Remus. There's a lot of history here. The other thing that we did was we went out to eat tonight. And last year, almost a year to the day, tomorrow will mark the day, my daughter turned 21. And I tried to get her to sit down and do the Bourbcast with me. And she sat down for a minute, and then we had terrible streaming problems that night. I don't remember. Hey, Jordan, how are you, man? G'day. G'day, sir. I don't remember what the issue was, but I had to do it on my phone, so it didn't look that great. But she sat down, and she didn't drink anything with me, and she had things to do. Well, tonight we went out to dinner, and by golly, she drank with me. Look at that. Look at that. I'm so proud. Such a proud father. Look at that beer. I never thought my daughter would be a beer person, but she likes that, and she likes margaritas, and she likes different types of wine. So I am, of course, very proud to have sat down and had an alcoholic beverage with my daughter tonight. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. So Denny's watching. Denny, this is for you, Betty. A couple of weeks ago, Denny got in touch with me, and he said, hey, do you know anything about George Remus? And I went, I got a couple bottles. I don't know which one you have. There is a lower proof one that is pretty popular. This is the single barrel, and I started to research this bottle, and before I even get started, I noticed on the bottle, it says, distilled in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. So I'm thinking, okay, it's MGP. Well, it is, sort of. It's their brand. Now, gosh, it's been probably a good year-ish somewhere since we did their last proprietary blend, which was Rossville Union, and I thought this rye was fantastic. Again, I don't necessarily care about it being MGP. You know, after a while, you start to get repetitive. Oh, this is MGP juice. Oh, this is MGP juice. Well, this is really theirs. They made it for them, for themselves, marketed as their own label. After they purchased the Remus distillery, let me get into it a little bit here. They purchased it from Queen City Whiskey Company in 2016. Queen City Whiskey Company was purchased by Luxco, and Luxco was then purchased by MGP. So it's theirs anyway. In 2021, the business filings for Queen City Whiskey moved from Crestwood, Kentucky to St. Louis, Missouri, home of Luxco. So even their business filings, that business is still there, Queen City Distillery, but now Luxco owns it, which means MGP owns it. So when you have a brand like this one that is fashioned after the king of the bootleggers, that's also barrel proof. I want the whiskey to be as potentially as exciting as the history of its namesake. So I hope it is. I hope it's that good. As I get started into reading this, can you believe it? Could you believe it? I didn't open it. Can you believe it? All right, this is going to help inform me as to what I want to do here. Okay, we're going to go Glencairn because there is aroma there in the neck pour, but I'm going to end up making a mess if I don't take this off. There. All right. So let's go ahead and get it poured into the Glencairn. The nose was a little timid. If it would have been a little bit more robust, let's leave it open. I just wanted to air out. If it would have been more robust, I would have used the Bourbon Trail glass that we used last week. But, you know, it is what it is. We'll use the Glencairn. Glencairn. Try to say that after you've had a half a dozen. Let's see. MGP has a George Remus straight bourbon whiskey. They have a Repeal Reserve series, a Volstead Reserve, which is named after the act that basically made Prohibition work. We'll tell you more about that. And they have this one, the single barrel cask strength straight bourbon whiskey, which means it has to have been aged at least 4 years. And there's no age statement on it. I have heard it's aged higher. We'll get into that too. But first, the legend. While it's sitting here and getting its air into it, I love giving a few minutes to get the air into it. Remus was born in Prussia, in 1878, moved to the States when he was 10, starting in New York, and then to Baltimore, then Milwaukee, then Chicago, and at age 14, he went to work for his uncle who owned a pharmacy. Flash forward 7 years, he has his pharmacy license and degree, and he buys the pharmacy from his uncle. This comes into play later on in his life. Listen to this. Let's see. In 1900, he was admitted to the Illinois bar. He went to law school. He got his degree. By now, he was also married with a baby daughter. So he was a bit of an overachiever. 21 years old, and his deck is stacked, so to speak. Within 9 years, sales had gotten ahead of the Congress. Our states had gotten ahead of the Congress and started to ban the sale of liquor. And as a lawyer, he represented a lot of the bootleggers and was rather interested in the sheer volume of money that the bootleggers were making. And money appealed to him a lot. So, 9 years later, Congress passes the Volstead Act. Now, you've heard of Prohibition. You've heard of the 18th Amendment. What is the Volstead Act? Because it predates Prohibition. Now, they knew Prohibition was coming. They knew they were going to have to ratify, by 2/3 of the states, the 18th Amendment, which outlawed alcohol. But it didn't set parameters on what the alcohol was. It didn't say how you could use it and where the loopholes were. So, it didn't say what the intoxicating liquor was. But the Volstead Act did. The 18th Amendment prohibitionally basically said it was legal for the federal government and for states to ban the manufacture, production, use, and sale of alcohol. The Volstead Act was that federal side of the legislation. So the 18th Amendment said, states, federal, you can make laws. The Volstead Act was the federal law that set the guidelines, and they were very strict. It capped alcoholic consumption at 0.05% by volume. We're talking mouthwash, right? Listerine mouthwash probably has 0.05% alcohol in it. Let's see. I lost my place. There we go. The 18th Amendment also permitted states to pass their own laws and their own criminal penalties, although it's hard to imagine anything more reductive than federal law was at 0.05%. Beer would have been too much, right? Because that's what, 3% by volume by the lowest standards, 2.3 or something like that. So, I mean, that's already way, way more than the 0.05%. That's a very restrictive number. But the young upstart lawyer, Mr. Remus, was the one who found loopholes in the Volstead Act, such as the booze that had already been manufactured prior to Prohibition and was being held privately, as well as being able to sell booze for medicinal purposes. Those were loopholes that he found in the Volstead Act. Remus was a licensed pharmacist and might have the utility of being able to purchase medicinal alcohol. Imagine that. So, by now, he was also divorced, thanks to an affair he had with his legal assistant, and that was the year that Prohibition went into effect, 1920. Here's where Remus gained notoriety. This is why he's called the king of the bootleggers. Excuse me. He would legally be able to deliver large quantities of booze to his drugstores and drug companies that he purchased. But then he would have his own vehicles hijacked. He'd hijack his own booze. Brilliant, right? Kinda. Only 5 months into Prohibition, his warehouse in Chicago was raided by federal agents. He escaped capture and moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, mere hours from where most, like 80% of the booze was being made at that time, and the 6 existing distilleries who could make it medicinally. Remus started buying up drug companies, and he built an operation from contacts that he had made as an attorney, getting all the permits he needed to go to the distilleries himself in person to pick up medicinal liquor. In a month's time, he was back in business. He created his own trucking company, which he'd hijack, and the booze would go to a warehouse he called Death Valley right there in Cincinnati. He had 3,000 people on the payroll. We're talking politicians. We're talking federal agents. Goons, armed goons, security guards, and dirty cops and attorneys. 3,000 people. By the age of 43 in 1921, he developed a reputation for opulence. He gave diamonds away. He gave cars away at parties. He was well known in the area to give away $100 bills to kids. So, By that autumn, the warehouse, Death Valley, was raided. He's your type of guy, Jordan, I know, right? You're going to be interested in where this goes, so hang out with me here. Death Valley was raided that autumn. People being paid by Remus helped to arrest him. They were on his payroll, and they helped get him arrested. He was arrested. He went to prison for 2 years on, get this, 3,000 violations of the Volstead Act, and only got 2 years. That's the amazing part. The jury took less than 2 hours to convict him. While in prison, Remus had a big mouth. You know, he was a bit of a show guy. He liked to get noticed, and he was kind of a big mouth, and he decided to start bragging to a prison mate that his new wife, the one that he had the affair with, had all the control of his money. Well, the prison mate was actually an undercover federal agent. Franklin Dodge was his name. He went to his office, and he turned in his badge. He quit his job. Why? So he could find Mrs. Remus and have an affair. That's exactly what he did, too. He went and found Mrs. Remus and had an affair with her. The two of them then liquidated and hid most of the millions in the Remus fortune, leaving the king of bootleggers with only $100 to his name. They even tried to have him deported. Then they tried to have him killed. The guy that was supposed to kill him decided not to do it because he was worried that the people who had hired him, the guys that had liquidated Remus's estate, were not going to be honest and they wouldn't pay him. So he didn't do it. So Remus got to live. Fresh out of prison, Imogene filed for divorce. This gets so twisted. On his way to court to finalize the divorce, Remus had his cab driver chase down the taxi that Imogene was in. When they stopped, Remus got out and shot Imogene to death. He killed her. Did she deserve it? I don't know. Murder's a pretty big thing, but you can see why it's a crime of passion, right? Well, then get this. At this time, it's important to note that Remus invented the idea of transitory insanity as a plea. He had used it for somebody who was accused of murder, and he didn't think he was going to be able to get him off. So he pled transitory insanity, which nowadays is called temporary insanity. So Remus invented that plea. He's pretty brilliant, really, when you think about it. He's an overachiever, right? So he came up with it in 1914, and the guy who benefited from it, the murderer, got a very light sentence, all things considered. So this is what Remus pleaded at his murder trial, based on the affair and the divorce and losing his fortune. And after a month-long show trial, it was made all the papers. It was big news. Remus was acquitted of murder by reason of temporary insanity, or at the time, transitory insanity. The jury deliberated less than 19 minutes and came back and acquitted him. But now, that's the good side. The downside to pleading insanity was that he got committed to an insane asylum in Cincinnati. Actually, no, in Lima, Ohio, which I think is still standing today. The building is evacuated, if it's the one I'm thinking of. It's in the Shawnee Township. But he got put in that insane asylum in Lima, Ohio. That only lasted 7 months because they couldn't prove that he was still insane by that 7 months was over. So once released, he moved to Covington, Kentucky, just across the river from Cincinnati, started a consulting firm, got married for the third time, and lived a relatively normal life until he died from a stroke in 1952 at the age of 73. So that is the life and times of George Remus. Now, the other thing you need to know is he's kind of famous in the movies and books too. This should be a movie, exactly, right? So, he was portrayed in the second season of Boardwalk Empire, popular television show, and yes, his character on the show referred to himself in the third person, and I understand Mr. Remus did that too occasionally. He would actually, well, George Remus says, or George Remus thinks, or George thinks, that's that annoying thing that people do that they think they're cool when they do that. It's not cool, don't do that. Anyway, he did that. And you'll see that in Boardwalk Empire if you ever watch it. I haven't seen it yet, but now I want to because I didn't realize it was about Prohibition, and it is. The other place that you might hear about him is not by actually hearing his name, but he met with F. Scott Fitzgerald in the Sealback Hotel in Louisville, Kentucky. And F. Scott Fitzgerald is the guy who wrote The Great Gatsby. So it is said that The Great Gatsby may be loosely based on George Remus, the king of the bootleggers. He would have these big parties, he'd give away stuff. So that is the rumor, and that is basically the history of Mr. Remus. Now, that's a hell of a history. And the juice is MGP, so let's give it a shot, shall we? Now, Remus did own a distillery, but he was never a distiller himself, so maybe it's appropriate. If nothing else, the brand, which is an MGP brand, now known as Ross and Squibb, they're marketing themselves for themselves. By the way, the Ross and Squibb name, Squibb was the name of the distiller that Remus purchased. So there's some honesty there. Again, we got Rossville Union and George Remus. Those are the two MGP brands now, Ross and Squibb brands. Squibb was the distillery that Remus bought. Want to get this right. It was founded in 1869 and sold to Remus in 1921. A year after Prohibition kicked off and 2 years after the Volstead Act kicked off. Ross refers to the Ross Distillery, which is where MGP sits today in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. So this bottle. This first came out in 2020. This is from that first 2020 batch that they did. That's when it got introduced. There were 2 different mash bills available, a lower rye and a higher rye, in this now annual release. This one is 122.5 proof. That's 61.25% alcohol by volume. This was an OHLQ exclusive barrel pick. They had 10 single barrels that year, and this was barrel number 253. And we'll find out more about it. Mash bill is 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% barley. Word on the street is this is a 5-year bourbon. The OHLQ did a November 2021 release of George Remus as well, so we're willing to bet that this fall you're going to see a third release, the 2022. Michael David, finally catching a live Bourbcast. Broadcast of the Bourbcast. See what I did there? Yes. And Danny, here we go. All right, this is sat long enough. I've talked long enough. Let's get into it. I'm glad I switched to this glass. That one would not have had enough nose. Legs, though. Man, it's hanging on there. So I like Lawrenceburg rye. Again, this Rossville Union is a Lawrenceburg rye, and I like it. And I like this. I like the way this smells. It's got a great rye nose. It's a high rye, 21%, 75% corn, but it's considered a high rye. Normally with ryes, you'll have 15% or less. Anything more than that, you're looking at a high rye. I think 15% is the cutoff. It may be higher than that, maybe 18%. I would have to look that up. Like I didn't do near enough research on this one, right? I think that story's fantastical. I like that, even though it's got a kind of convoluted history about where it came from, and it's a source rye, but it's their source. I like that they're keeping the heritage and the lore of George Remus alive. You know, that's what's wonderful about these stories. This isn't his recipe. He didn't really have anything to do with it. He owned the distillery for a while, but I love that they're keeping his name alive and keeping that legend alive. Okay. There's definitely some citrus on the nose. Actually, maybe some ginger. That's a new one. Vanilla, cinnamon for sure. Lime. I'm getting lime. That's the citrus I'm getting, is lime. It's a sweeter nose. It's concentrated nicely. Well, some may not be aware of this, but you are in fact a storyteller, so it makes sense that you enjoy a good story. I do like a good story, and there's more, it says. Yeah, that's okay. I do like a good story. I love telling stories. I love watching stories. I love hearing stories. I mean, I was in radio for almost 20 years. You got to learn how to tell a good story and keep it captivating. All right. There is some ethanol in the nose, but 122.5 proof. There's going to be ethanol in the nose. So last week we did the Detroit City, and that did not drink to its proof level. It drank lower proof. Let's see where this one ends up. I have that same shirt. Yeah, somebody else was showing me a picture today of a shirt like this. It's not this shirt, but it had something else. It said 2 shots and a booster. And the booster was a mug of beer. So I thought, all right, I'll wear mine today. So here I am. All right. All right. This one has got a slow bloom, but it's a potent one. This one drinks like it's proof. This one's a little hot. It's got long legs and the legs are hot. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Yes, from Coachella Valley, California. That's right. We're coastal. Woohoo! Hang 10, 20 if you're a dog. All right. So that started right in the center and went out. But it didn't go all the way out. It stopped about halfway on each side of the center of my tongue. That bloom just went out. And now the legs on this are still there. There is a specific flavor I'm getting. I want to say it's got leather legs. And leather's not a bad thing. It's when you think of leather, oh, I want my bourbon to have notes of something that sounds yummy, like macaroni and cheese or something like that. But leather, if you smell leather, right? Corinthian leather, brand new leather seats in a car. You know, think about the pleasure of the smell of leather. You know, if you get a brand new leather jacket, if you want to talk about cowboy leather with with cowboy boots, there's this scent to that leather, right? And this kind of reminds me of leather on the back end. But I've only given it the one taste. So let's go for numero 2. Okay. This one is kind of a hot one. It's not like a Stag Junior hot, but it's warm. This is one of those that dries out your mouth a little bit. The ethanol is strong enough. It's a 5-year, but the ethanol in it is strong enough that it dries you out a little bit. This is definitely a stronger pour. This is a second pour for me, and it's still got very long legs. I'm still feeling the burn on my tongue. So this might be one that could benefit a little bit by a splash of water. We'll get to that shortly. This is the way they describe it. Well balanced with notes of fruit and candied banana breads, accompanied by barrel char and leather, I got that, with a sweet baking spice finish. The short finish is sweeter with baking spices. You got your nutmeg, you got your cinnamon, maybe some oatmeal, actually. And then as the finish progresses and starts to wane, that oatmeal turns into like a leathery, and it's a boot leather. It's a cowboy leather finish. It's not Corinthian leather. It's a boot leather, and it's fine. The long finish is going to help somebody drink this slower. What I find in shorter finishes is that I want to get right to the next drink again because I've lost everything. This has got a very long finish on it. So banana breads. Yeah, I mean, I think with every bourbon, you can have a little bit of that sense of banana in it. I've had more than enough people tell me on a first tasting or a second tasting, hey, I get banana. And I generally don't pay attention to it because I get it all the time. But yeah, I got some banana out of this, and the rye does bring out that banana bread side of things. I'm going to hit it one more time here, and then I'm going to add some water to it. Got a real nice vanilla note. Not sweet. It's not sweet. There's some that just come off as sweet. And I was looking for that creme brulee style there, and it isn't there. There's no creme brulee to it. There's no cheesecake. There's no graham cracker. There's nothing like that. It's predominantly the rye and those baking spices. Now, what I am getting is the nutmeg and the cinnamon and the there's no, I don't get honey off of this. I don't get necessarily a black pepper, maybe a green pepper. There is a difference. The rye notes on this are definitely front and center. Okay, how much do I have in there? Let's just top it off a little bit. All right. Now we do the water. We do about a milliliter of water. And that's probably 5 or 6 milliliters of bourbon. This is going to be not quite a milliliter. Ooh. Dinner's ready. Popcorn's ready. All right. Now sometimes these high-proof bourbons tend to be locked up. The Detroit City that we tried last week wasn't, well, it was high proof. It wasn't as high proof as this, and it didn't drink as hot, but it was locked up. And when we put a little water into it, it unlocked it, opened it up a little bit. It really was a nicer pour, a little more of a buttery finish. This one, I'm interested in seeing what a little bit of water will do. I'm putting less water in this one than I did in the Detroit City last week. So let's see what we got here. All right, that ought to do it. It should be nicely emulsified. Mixed and emulsified are different things. Look it up. I was watching a TV show today about cooking. So now I got cooking on my brain. All right. Here we go. Still a warm one, but it brought down the proof a lot. Made it a lot easier to drink, a lot less harsh. It did improve the mouthfeel a lot. It's a lot more buttery now. It's a lot more silky. Before, it was just kind of, well, it wasn't silky. That's the best way to describe it, is it wasn't silky, and now it is. It's got a nice mouthfeel to it. I'm feeling it all the way down, though. Whoo! Phew! All right, so that was the experience. Now let me get some tasting out of it here. All right. See what I didn't get much of a difference, but let's see what really happens when I give it a good tasting. It's an overall better pour. Adding a little bit of water to it makes it just overall better. I don't know that I can give you different notes. I think the notes are about the same. There was something else in it, and I can't identify it. It wasn't sweet, so I was looking for honey. I was looking for butterscotch. I was looking for graham cracker. I was looking for those bananas. And I maybe got a little banana peel. Maybe that's the difference. That doesn't sound appetizing, but really, when you're drinking whiskey, those little notes make a big difference. Yeah, I don't sense a big difference in it as far as the taste itself. It's a better pour. It's less harsh, and it just feels better in your mouth with a little bit of water on it. Excuse me. So let me finish this, and then we'll go on to the ice sphere. Now I've got a thing that I don't do once I've watered it down, I don't pour this over the ice. If this was neat, I'd go ahead and pour it over, but I'm not going to do that because this is already diluted, and then I wouldn't be able to give you a good, honest take about what this is just by itself over ice. Now, from what I gathered by my research, Mr. Remus liked to have whiskey, and I don't know if this is true or not, but Mr. Remus, or somebody that says Mr. Remus, liked to have 2 ounces of bourbon and just bitters, nothing else, and that was the drink of choice. But again, he wasn't a distiller. This wasn't his recipe, so you can't say that it's his thing. So I don't know. It was a recipe on the website. I just thought I saw that that was the way he liked to drink it. Who knows? Maybe that was just a thing of the times. I didn't bring any bitters down. We're not going to do that tonight. I just want to try it over ice. And I'm not going to make a big pour. I did a little looking. I knew that I had 2 bottles of George Remus, and I want to call him Uncle Remus because of the Brer Rabbit series that was written a long time ago, Uncle Remus, but George Remus. I forgot what I was saying. Must not have been very important, or I wouldn't have forgotten it. Oh, I remember. My house was on fire. I think my spheres. There we go. Stuck to the glass. I'm almost ready to make more spheres. I'm down to my last few, so it's time to make a bunch more. All right. That's interesting. So sometimes when you taste whiskey, you have to go with what you hear in your head, right? It may not make any sense, but something sparks a taste or a memory or something on your tongue, and you identify it as such. And I tried to debunk it in my own head. But on ice, cooled down, right in the center of my tongue, I got a coffee note. Now, when you're talking about a finish that has leather in it and rice notes, coffee is not out of the ordinary. Its placement is out of the ordinary. Normally I would get coffee in the front or in the back. I get this dead center. And I don't know if I'll get it again, but I got a coffee note right in the center. Normally the center is reserved for like really bright notes like your citrus, your lime, your lemon, things like that. That's where even mint. There's sometimes I'll drink it and I'll get mint right in the center. It's that spot for bright notes. This was not bright. This is a more acidic pour to me, which is probably the ethanol and not like an acidity to it. But I got coffee. One more try. If you were to take a pin and prick the center of my tongue, that spot where the pin hit is the coffee note. Nowhere else. It's that small, it's that tiny. But it's there. Now, this is the single barrel cask strength. The normal one is like 94 proof or something like that. I've never had that. The only 2 bottles I have are the exact same. That's what I was going to say. That I have 2 bottles of this, and I went and looked at the other bottle thinking that maybe I was lucky and got a second one that's a little bit different. I would have opened them both. They're the same. Exact same bottle, same barrel, everything. Yay. So I can't compare them. And you can't get them anymore because this is the 2020 release. You can't... in Cleveland, there were 2 places on the OHLQ map where they had limited quantity of the 2021 release that was from last November. So if you want it, you better go start looking for it. Otherwise, they will probably have a 2022 release this fall. Just in time for Thanksgiving. There was a brightness on the front of that one. I think I brought back that lime's right in the front. One more. I gotta explore that. I don't want much. I want it to be able to cool down. It's 122.5 proof. I don't want to end up crawling up the stairs. Get this away from the microphone and stir it down here. I want to know what that brightness was. All right. Right on the front. I kept everything on the front that time. I didn't swish it around. I didn't chew it. I want to say that front is that lime, that citrus lime. That's why I got it again. I've got myself convinced that that's what it is. So that's what it is. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Lime. Very subtle, but it's there. All right, so there you go. That is the George Remus, the single barrel from OHLQ 2020. I hit this pretty hard, considering 122.5 proof. So that's all I'm going to do tonight. I will, though, tell you what we're going to do next week. There was a time that this brand name had been bandied about. You saw it on social media. You saw it. People were talking about it. And I managed to find a bottle of it, and then I got lucky and I found a second bottle of it, and then I found out it's not that hard to find depending on where you look. Excuse me. So, Tom's here. Hey, Tom, how are you, man? I got your other message. Thank you. So, depending on where you look, it gets easier to find it. In the state of Ohio, it's a little tough, but out of state, it's a little bit easier to find. It is a veteran-owned company, and you know I love promoting veteran-owned companies on this show. This one is called Lead Slingers Bourbon Whiskey. Let's see, veteran-owned. Lead Slingers Whiskey was founded in 2013 by 7 combat veterans. When U.S. Air Force troops, U.S. Army Rangers, Green Berets, and paratroopers combined their love for America and fine whiskey, Lead Slingers Whiskey was born. Tired of people afraid to support the Second Amendment, the LSW team, was focused on bringing a quality bourbon whiskey to freedom-loving, like-minded individuals. Stay frosty and freedom on. Product of the USA. So next week, we're going to be trying the Lead Slingers Bourbon Whiskey. Yeah, buddy, one of my new faves. All right, Jordan, well, good. I've been hearing good things about it. People seem to like it. I'm lucky enough to have a couple of bottles of it. So, Lead Slingers, this is our pour next week. Now, here's an important programming note. Over the next few months, my Thursdays are going to be completely taken over. The ability for me to get here and do this with the quality and the research and all the stuff that I do is going to be greatly challenged. Let's put it that way. So, for the next couple of months, next couple of months, I'm going to be moving the Bourbcast to Wednesday. I don't want to do Friday, Saturday, Sunday because you got other stuff. And when we get into the fall, you're going to be seeing football games. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to try to compete with all that stuff. So Wednesday, next week, we're going to come back and do Lead Slingers. And we're going to stick with Wednesdays probably, well, at least till the end of September. If it works out well and more people can watch, then I'll stay to Wednesdays. The whole idea of doing it on Thursday was to give you an idea of a bottle that you might want to try for the weekend. It was suggested that I shouldn't do it on the weekend because by then the weekend is there and you could have purchased it earlier. And so that was why we did it on Thursday. Well, Wednesday, moving it up a day shouldn't be all that bad, right? And if you can't be there, that's fine. There's always reruns. there's always Memorex. But from next week through at least the end of September, we're going to switch to Wednesdays. It'll just be easier for me, and I'll be able to give you all the content that you have come to expect. Okay? So we'll see you next Wednesday with Lead Slingers Bourbon Whiskey. I want to thank all of you for coming aboard. You're really going to enjoy it. I hope so, Jordan. And I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming along. I'm glad you're here and not chasing snakes. He hunts pythons in the Everglades. So we got California, we got Florida, Ohio for sure. I know we got some Kentucky with us. Very, very cool. Maybe next year or next Wednesday, maybe I'll do a roll call, find out where everybody's from. That'll be fun. And I know there's people that don't even talk. They just come on and they're watching and they don't say anything, and that's fine. That's great. I'm glad you're watching, and I appreciate you being here. So this was George Remus. Next week, Lead Slingers, Bourbon Whiskey, and I thank you again for watching. You guys have a fantastic what's left of your week, and we will see you next Wednesday.